And we're back. Ellie Krug with the Illegal Trans Woman. Now is the time for the big interview, and I'm thrilled for our big interview to have Aleksandra Vaca, who happens to be a trans woman and independent journalist. I love that combination. Who covers anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, federal anti-trans actions, and other political and legal developments affecting the queer Americans. Her stories have directly impacted legislative outcomes and litigation in a number of states, as well as at the federal level. And she regularly shines a light, I like that, on quietly implemented policies impacting trans people's access to health care and accurate identity documents. Aleksandra, welcome to the Illegal Trans Woman. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, so I just got done laying out a little bit about some very depressing stuff around the trans athlete cases that came down from the Supreme Court this week. We'll talk about that later in the interview, but we also have other depressing things on. And so, listeners, I told you at the start of this show, this is not going to be a warm and fuzzy show, and we're going to get more of non-warm and fuzzy coming up. So, Aleksandra, the reason I wanted to have you on the show is I saw that you had some good angles, some good reporting on what's going on in Texas with the Texas GOP, and particularly about the recent convention, statewide GOP convention they had, and some of the platform planks that came about. Can you give us first an idea, about what the landscape is like with the the Texas GOP, and generally, how transphobic that party is as a whole?
Yeah, so I think I'm a bit uniquely positioned. I'm from Texas. I moved to Texas when I was not even 2 years old. So I've lived here basically all of my life, and the things that they have done have directly impacted my life in a lot of ways. I'll just start off with this. I like doing this. I think it's a good icebreaker. Let's play a game. How old do you think I am?
How old do I think you are? I'm going to guess you're in your early 20s.
Nope.
Okay.
I am 19.
Okay.
So my whole thing, and the reason that I bring this up is because when Texas started targeting families of trans kids, this was in early 2022, I was watching that as a 15-year-old, and I was scared.
I bet.
I thought, like, I had just come to terms with who I was, and I thought, well, if my parents know about this, they go tell a doctor, the state could take me away from them.
That's right. Because Ken Paxton decreed that would be
to do that.
Yep.
He said it was child abuse. It was very loose. He investigated 40 families. And I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm just not going to do that. And so I was left alone for a year. And then the investigations were blocked. The state passed Senate Bill 14. And I'm like, okay, I think it's safe now. I don't really know what else I can do. My mental health is really bad.
What was SB 14 in Texas?
That's the gender affirming care ban.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So they passed that, and I come out to my parents, and while they aren't like the most accepting, they say, okay, we're going to help you find a therapist. And that, me, 16, that took 2 months.
Okay.
Because every single therapist that they contacted would say, I'm sorry, we can't, because Senate Bill 14 forbids us from facilitating gender affirming care. And if we see you and we talk with you about this, we could be facilitating that. So we don't want to take that risk.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it took 2 months until a therapist didn't say that anymore. And during those 2 months, I almost attempted to take my life. So that's kind of the experience that I had. Now, Ken Paxton, he did this in March. He released an opinion where he said, well, you guys that are interpreting it in this way with the facilitate stuff, you're right about that. You can't talk with kids about their identity and affirm them, because you could be facilitating those treatments, and that's illegal. So I think that's kind of like my firsthand perspective. I don't go to school here anymore, thankfully, so I now split my time. But this kind of stuff, you don't see it anywhere else. There's no other state that categorically bans therapists from seeing trans people or seeing trans kids. It just, you're not letting them access care, and now you don't let them get therapy either. I mean, it's insane.
Well, so Aleksandra, I just want to say, first of all, my heart goes out to you. Okay, I'm just so very sorry that you you've had to go through that experience, and of course, you still live in Texas, so you're continuing to go through um, horrible transphobic experiences at the hands of the state in Texas. I'm just really sorry, and listeners, we sometimes, but not very often, get firsthand accounts like this, and it's really important for us to understand what it means to live in a state of abject oppression against transgender people. So, all right, so I mean, you're fairly young, but you've been able to come out, thank God, okay, and thank God you didn't act on the suicidal ideation. So thank you, and please don't ever do that. And I'm just going to tell you right now.
I'm fine.
Okay, all
I'm
right.
good.
Because I was going to tell you, you can call me at any time. All right, you've got my number.
Right. Well, thank you.
Because I'm happy to
promise
talk to
I
you.
don't need it anymore.
Okay.
I started hormone therapy in October 2024. This was like a few days after I turned 18, and not felt this. It's
Great.
been so different.
Yeah. Yep. Well, Yep. That would be Ellie Krug's story as well. So bring us, thank you for that background, and thank you for the firsthand experience and account. What's going on now, with the GOP? I mean, they had their convention. They come out with, all kinds of stuff, but they come out with some very, very significant anti-trans planks at that convention. Can you bring us up to date on what those planks were and how they're being received and where it looks like it's going to go?
So I just want to preface this by saying a lot of these were actually also passed in 2024. Like a lot of them are verbatim
at the 2024 convention. Okay, all right.
There's
thanks.
one that was significantly expanded, which is the one about teachers. But in summary, they're calling for a ban on medical and mental health care for trans people between the ages of 18 and 26. So they want to expand what they already have.
Right.
Already being the only state that does the therapy thing, they want to bring that up. The other things that they want to do is they want to ban social transitioning for people between the ages of 18 and 26 as well. They want to ban trans teachers, and they want to ban social transitioning as well, although they actually did do that last year. There was a bill, this is Senate Bill 12. They banned a lot of weird things. I mean, this state is really weird. We have now Bible mandated readings.
Yeah.
So, but basically, they banned GSAs last year.
Gay
straight
alliances in high schools.
And schools are now also prohibited from socially transitioning kids, even with parental consent. So, like this rhetoric that says, well, we don't want schools secretly socially transitioning kids, which is what Trump ranted about in his State of the Union this year. They're now going, well, even with parental consent, we are not going to let you do that. And even if the teacher wants to, we're not going to let you do that. But if you dare to tell a teacher that they have to affirm that identity, then we're going to sue you. There's a lot of hypocrisy going around with this.
Now, this is not law yet. These are proposals.
This is law.
Oh, this is
okay. This social transitioning stuff is law. The ban on gay straight alliances is law.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And then
this is why I'm having you on, because it's hard for me to keep track. Can I just ask you, what is the thing about the age 26? I mean, why did they pick 26 versus not 27 or 25?
It's 26 because that's when they say your brain fully develops.
Ah,
And so they say, well, we don't think you can make a decision if your brain isn't developed. So of course they've been
okay.
pushing this around a lot. They first started with 16. In case you didn't know this, there was a bill, the first one of these bills. It was, I don't remember the name of the legislator, was some guy from South Dakota. He first proposed it to be 16. Then the 80, he started working with the ADF. That was raised the Alliance
Alliance
Defending
Defending
Freedom,
Freedom.
this
Yep.
right wing legal group,
Yep. Yep.
basically the evil ACLU. I'll put it like that. And they raised that to 18. The state of Alabama raised that to
To
19 because
19,
that's their
because that
age of
was the
majority.
age of consent. Yep.
Mississippi didn't, even though their age of majority is 21, they actually just went up to 18. That's a strange one. But then Puerto Rico did go up to 21. And of course, Trump goes up to 19, even though the federal age of majority is 18.
So, so that is not, that's about accessing gender affirming care.
Mhm.
I mean, as you're saying, Texas is the only state that's outlawing social transitioning, and
There's also Kansas, actually. This was tacked on to the end of Senate Bill 63, nearly identical in its use of terms.
oh, okay,
But that the first one was actually in Kansas.
okay, all right. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
So, all right, so underlying all of this, can we just agree? I mean, is horrible prejudice against trans people, but also horrible ignorance. And I mean,
Mhm.
because you know, you tell. Here's my take. Okay, I'd appreciate your opinion. I believe they think that if they can keep you from transitioning, you won't be transgender. Okay, that your brain somehow will suddenly wake up, and that somehow you'll see, the light of living as a cisgender, non-transgender person. I think they have no idea that it's about brain wiring. It's just about how we get wired as humans. Just like, the left-handed thing, people get wired for left-handedness, or you get wired for same-sex attractions, all of that. I mean, what's your take on it? What that
I mean, I'd say that it's both. I don't think it stems from just wanting trans people to realize that life is better being cis and just not transition. I don't think it's about trans people at all. I don't think it's about having us live the normal life or whatever. I think it's more about them not wanting to see us out in public. That's why they pass drag bans. It's about them not thinking that our care actually helps us. And that's why you see them talk about public funds a lot. That's why you see them talk about banning it for prisons. That's why you see them banning it for Medicaid in a bunch of states, and they don't even say anything about it. That's and they don't think that we can actually pass, as like the slang term. So they will force us to carry IDs that have our assigned sex at birth, and then they will say, well, wait a minute, this ID looks fake. Like this happened last week in Kansas to a woman. She was charged with driving with an invalid license after an officer refused to believe that
right?
her gender assigned at birth was male, like Kansas forced her ID to show.
Right. Yeah, the Kansas thing we've covered on this show quite a bit because it's just horrific about, retroactively taking away driver's licenses and birth certificates. So, all right. So, what I mean, uh, what is your sense of the normal, Republican, if there's if that phrase is accurate, normal Republican Texan? Do they really care one way or the other about trans people?
Define normal. This is
S- You know,
I the
s-
ideal of a normal Republican changes all the time.
well, I guess somebody that is not, MAGA tied to, Fox News every day.
Mm.
Um, just somebody, I mean, because the Republican Party has always been very strong in Texas and before MAGA came along, you had fiscal conservatives. I mean, Texas, gave us Bush 1 and Bush 2. So, for those, and maybe it's just that there aren't many quote unquote normal Republicans in Texas anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, at least a traditional Republican would be someone who values small government, for someone who doesn't want government overreach, who doesn't want the government telling them what to do. I think, especially in this state, there's a big focus placed on possession.
Right.
That's always been like a massive thing. Like they always say, oh, the Democrats, they want to take your guns because they know that that works, because they know that that's what the majority of this state wants. And even Democrats in this state favor that to an extent because of that. Just
Right.
it's a widely held opinion. I think in general, Texans, I don't think they care much about trans people. I'm going to be honest with you. I think aside from pockets of Latinos in the South, it doesn't change their votes at all. I would even question whether or not it drives them out to vote. Like there was this special election in, I don't remember if this was this year or last year, but this was this Texas Senate seat 9. There was this wham scans person, Trump plus 17 district, this very prominent abortion anti-trans person was running, and she lost in the special. It just didn't turn voters out, even though she's probably one of the most prominent special election candidates
Hmm.
Republicans have had in a while. It just didn't work.
Okay. Well, um, and of course, they're going, Paxton's going after James Tallarico, questioning his masculinity and certainly
Whether or not he's a vegan.
right. And also, implying that I think we got Stephen Miller saying, that he
Yeah,
was
Stephen Miller said
transgender,
it.
so, again, let's shift gears, okay? Because you're a younger person, you're a younger trans woman. Um, you for much of your life, you've been living under MAGA. You've been living under laws that have become increasingly more and more oppressive.
Mhm.
We have the Supreme Court coming down with the trans athletes cases this week. I don't know if you've read the case, but I'm sure you've read some analyses about the case.
I've read the opinion itself.
Okay.
I wrote about the opinion on Tuesday.
Oh, you did. Okay. I'm sorry I didn't catch that. And but I certainly read I got to everything. I stopped at Sotomayor because I just
Mhm.
I was too depressed. But what is your take about the case? I mean, how do you think that's going to impact not only trans athletes across the country, but trans people generally of all ages?
Mhm. I think the ruling itself appears narrow, at least to me. Uh, just in case your viewers don't know, there are exceptions that can be made for sex discrimination, and this is something that a lot of the justices were talking about. So, sex is a quasi suspect class. That means it only gets heightened scrutiny, it doesn't get the strict scrutiny. So, if there are some considerations that the government can say it needs to make, then the court would be more likely to uphold that.
Right.
So, I'll just add to that the Title IX challenge was the court ruled unanimously against that
Right.
because they said basically, well, it's legal to discriminate under Title IX on the basis of sex, and if you can discriminate on the basis of sex, and discrimination against trans people is by extension discrimination based on sex, then it's allowed. It's just allowed. And I thought that was pretty interesting reasoning. I thought most importantly was that none of them refuted Bostock. I think that was very important
Right.
to see
Listeners,
that
the
the majority.
Bostock case was the employment law case I mentioned briefly about in 2020, holding that trans people can't be discriminated against in employment.
Mhm.
So, well, they were very quick to, Kavanaugh and then Gorsuch in particular went to lengths to essentially say Bostock is different. And by the way, I think Bostock is on its way out for trans people. So, the EOC isn't
Why would you? Oh, right.
the EO.
The EOC is not enforcing that. I'm saying the
Yeah,
ruling itself. I
yeah.
don't think the ruling itself is on its way out. I think
I do.
in Gorsuch's, unless one of the liberal justices dies, I don't think Roberts is going to flip on it. And Gorsuch just explicitly defended his own reasoning in his concurrence.
He did. So we've got like just barely 2 minutes. I want to get your take as a young person. Let's put aside the legal analysis.
Mhm.
What does this case mean to you? What do you think the implications are for the future for trans people, particularly younger trans people?
I never played sports. Sorry. I never played sports as a kid. I was never really good at them. But I think it's wrong to say, well, you can't play. You made the decision to transition, so you can't play. And we don't want you to have the social opportunities that come with sports. We know there's like 10 of you across the entire country. Yeah. We don't care. We're just going to ban you because we don't like you. And I think just the message it sends is one of hate, one that says, well, you don't belong here. We don't like you. And I think as a young person, to see these kids be targeted by the right to try to force them to leave these places where their friends are, that they just wanted to play, I think it's sad. I think it gives an important precedent that this right-wing push, which started with sports, that it can work, that it can change minds and it can change the law.
Yeah. Yeah. I listeners, you're going to hear some more implications, I think, in the next segment. But I think it's going to be used as a weapon for much more oppression against the trans community. So, well, Aleksandra, I'm sorry that we're running out of time, but I really appreciate, first of all, you being alive. Okay. Secondly, I appreciate at such a young age you are being a very professional journalist, and that you are keeping track of everything. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being on The Illegal Trans Woman.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I don't really know what else to say, but
no, that's okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, listeners, we've been speaking with Aleksandra Vaca, a trans journalist, not even 20 years old, out of Texas, and God love her. Okay. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to continue speaking about the trans athletes' cases, what I think are the implications for our community. We'll be back in a second. Welcome back to The Legal Trans Woman, where we loudly advocate for transgender and gender variant humans, and where we don't fear or shirk from resisting the Trump and MAGA regime that seeks to totally control America and particularly totally come after trans people. And if it sounds like I'm angry, there's like some anger in my voice today, you better believe there is, okay? You've got that right. We are just on the heels of the U.S. Supreme Court issuing a horrible trans athlete ruling. Trump has crowing about it, and it's another big setback for me, for our community, my and your community, and I will get to that decision in a second. In terms of today's roadmap, okay, our big interview is with Aleksandra Vaca, who's got a young transgender woman living in Texas who's going to talk about the incredibly transphobic direction of the Texas GOP. And she's going to give us some insights about what it means to be a young person living in Texas under that oppression. And after that, I'm going to talk more about the fallout from the trans athlete cases. But just be warned, okay, today's show isn't at all warm and fuzzy. But it's important to be honest and clear about what we're facing, about what's going on, that the Supreme Court helped demonstrate yet again this week. And so let's get right to it. Contrary to what I usually do, I'm not bringing on a legal expert to discuss the trans athlete cases. Most of you know that I graduated from Boston College Law School in 1982. I was a civil trial lawyer for nearly 30 years. So most of you know I am a lawyer. I'm still licensed here, and I'm going to just be a lawyer on this show talking about the case. I'm fully capable and qualified to do that. The Supreme Court's trans athlete decision involves two cases. One brought by an Idaho college student who played both volleyball and track, and the other by a West Virginia middle schooler who now is a high schooler. Both of the plaintiffs are trans females. The college student transitioned genders after getting into college, but the middle school student transitioned in third grade. You've heard me talk in the past about how young children, as young as 3 years old, know. I mean, their brain is telling them it doesn't match the body. So this student transitioned in third grade, and by sixth grade, she was taking puberty blockers and female hormones. Both Idaho and West Virginia have laws banning trans girls from competing on female sports teams. The question was whether Title IX, among other things, whether Title IX, which ensures for women to be able to equally compete in sports, just as male athletes can. The question was whether Title IX bars trans females from participating in female sports teams. And unfortunately, the U.S. Supreme Court answered that question affirmatively against the female trans athletes. Now, I don't have enough time to get into all of the nuances of that decision, but here's the essence and key points of the decision. The actual opinion of the court was authored by Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who, by the way, happens to be a coach of female sports teams. So first takeaway, the court held that biological sex, that is a phrase that they are using, biological sex, what one is born with between their legs, okay, is the litmus. That is the only litmus test for one's sexual identity. The court was explicit in saying that one's sex is immutable. That is the phrase that they use. Sex is immutable. And taking that stand, the court either ignored or was oblivious to the fact that gender is really dictated by how one's brain operates, by how one's brain is wired. You've heard me say that before about it's similar to how one's brain dictates whether you are left-handed or right-handed. Secondly, the court held that when Title IX was enacted in 1975, long ago, society wasn't at all talking about or even recognizing the concept of someone having a gender, quote, gender identity. Thus, according to court, that cannot be included. The idea of gender identity can't be included in the word sex as found in Title IX because you have to, according to the court, interpret sex as it was being interpreted in 1975. Thirdly, the court found that West Virginia and Idaho had legitimate bases to pass laws banning trans athletes. The court cited that trans athletes were supposedly stronger, female trans athletes, and thus that they posed a risk of physical injury to cisgender, non-transgender female athletes. In other words, according to the court, these really are boys or men. This is according to the court, okay? They have those bodies, and somehow they're going to get involved, as Justice Kavanaugh went through all the list of contact sports involving women. And so, according to the court, that is a legitimate state interest to prevent injuries to cisgender girls from trans athletes. But additionally, other than the risk of injury, the court found also that simply having a female trans athlete on a girls' or women's team meant that a cisgender female athlete was being denied a spot on the team. In other words, we only got 14, spots on this volleyball team. One of them's being taken up by a trans girl. that means a cisgender girl didn't get the 13th spot. Okay, that's the rationale. And Kavanaugh went on to write about how female athletes all prize. I mean, he's got like 2 paragraphs about this, about how female athletes prize having trophies and ribbons to put in their rooms and something to cherish for the rest of their lives. And thus, having a trans athlete, female trans athlete on a girls' or women's team would deprive that cisgender woman of having that joy in her life. I mean, I know. I mean, my response was, really? I mean, this is a rationale for the U.S. Supreme Court about what ribbons or trophies some woman or girl has in her bedroom long after, when she comes back from college, or, comes back when, the house, parents are closing up the house and closing up the kid's bedroom. I don't know. I mean, but apparently this is the rationale. Lastly, the court also rejected both plaintiffs' claims that apart from Title IX, that both women had a constitutional right to equal protection to participate in sports. Essentially, the court said, reasoned that one's gender identity isn't enough to give them a constitutional basis to challenge anti-transgender laws. In other words, you being trans isn't you aren't marginalized enough as a group in order for you to get special protection from the court, as if, because we have special protections for people based on skin color. We have it based on religion. We have it based on disability status. We have special protections based on, in some instances, for lesbian, gays, and bisexuals, in some instances, okay? All right, and so, but they're essentially saying being trans is not enough to qualify you to get any kind of special protection. It's noteworthy, of course, that all 9 justices, including the 3 liberals, ruled that Title IX does not protect female trans athletes. And while the 3 liberal justices dissented from that part of the case where it rejected the trans athletes' constitutional claims, the liberal justices felt that the constitutional claims had merit, it didn't matter. They were the minority, again, as they always are, to the 6 conservative justices. I'll also note that there were 2 short concurrences by Justices Gorsuch and Thomas. Justice Gorsuch wanted to make clear that the court's 2020 ruling in the Bostock case, that's the case that held that transgender people were protected from employment discrimination. He wanted to make clear that Bostock did not apply because that was an employment case. It wasn't a sports case. Okay. Justice Thomas, in his just 2-page concurrence, went out of his way to write that gender dysphoria is, quote, a mutable mental state that is the object of psychiatric treatment. In other words, Justice Thomas wants everybody to believe that transgender people are mentally ill. He also wrote that to use language to obscure reality, to show indifference regarding the truth, is lying to the public and ceases to treat fellow citizens as equals, because Justice Thomas went on and said, that boys are boys, girls are girls, that sex is immutable, just as the majority held. And this is, we'll talk a little bit more about the reaction of transgender people when I speak with Aleksandra Vaca in a second. But I'm just going to tell you, Justice Thomas, he had to go out of his way to write some words that somewhere in future cases, people are going to grab those words. They're going to grab those words to use them against transgender people. Okay, I've got to take a break. We're going to do the big interview because we're going to do a little bit of a detour from this Supreme Court ruling. And then after the big interview, I'm going to come back and talk about how I feel everything is going to come down in the future for trans people based on this case. You're listening to me, Ellie Krug, airing on AM 950 in the Twin Cities and WCPT 820 AM in Chicago. We'll be back in a second.
All right, we're off.
Okay. All right. And we're back. Ellie Krug with the illegal trans woman, Aleksandra Vaca, only 19 years old. Very astute. So we'll have her back on the show again, I guarantee you. Okay, I have some takeaways from the trans athletes case, divided by the Supreme Court this week, combined cases. I keep referring in the singular. My first takeaway is first that Justice Kavanaugh, he did make clear in a footnote that the ruling in that case only applied to, well, first to West Virginia and Idaho, but also, by extension to the other 25 states that have enacted anti-trans athlete laws. He said that this case only applies to that. He specifically said that it did not apply, the ruling of the case applied to states like Minnesota or Illinois or other blue states that legally permit transgender students to play. However, in the same footnote, he noted that there's litigation ongoing in blue states that are seeking to overturn those blue state laws protecting trans athletes. And he made clear that it looks like the Supreme Court will consider those cases sometime in the future. So that may be next year, it may be 2 years from now. But this issue about allowing trans athletes to participate in sports in blue states, that issue is not like, rock solid, that it can't be taken away. Okay, that right in blue states can't be taken away. Second takeaway for me is that it's clear that the majority of the Supreme Court have absolutely no clue about what it means to be transgender. They have no concept, as I said in the interview with Aleksandra, no concept of brain wiring, and as long as they blame everything on biological sex, and that is the phrase that they're using, biological sex based on what is between your legs when you're born. Okay, as long as that is the test for whether transgender people get to enjoy rights or not, my community is likely to lose every time we come before the U.S. Supreme Court. Third takeaway, it's likely that this decision will be used to attempt, I think, a national sports ban. I think they're going to try, and there'll be legislation introduced when Congress gets back from its yet another recess. I'm predicting that there'll be legislation to propose a national sports ban. Okay, and I assume they're going to do that to put Democrats on the line, on the spot, to see whether they're going to resist that, that kind of legislation, because of course they want to use that in, the midterm election campaigning. I also believe that this decision will be used to justify a slew of new anti-transgender laws. Some of like what we were just talking about with Aleksandra Vaca in Texas, like other laws that are percolating up, that other laws that are going to be coming, because the Supreme Court has said, that sex is immutable. I mean, in essence, they didn't say this exactly, but in essence, that transgender people aren't real. And I'm just here to tell you, I've written 2 books. Go buy my books. I'm here to tell you, we are real. If you are trans and you're listening to my voice right now, we are darn real. We are. But these are the people who have power, and other people have power. And I'm anticipating we're going to get a whole lot of negative things. The White House, of course, jumped on this. And we've got a White House announcement coming from Donald Trump titled, Supreme Court bolsters President Trump's push to eliminate transgender insanity, in which he talks about restoring biological truth throughout the federal government. Okay, all right, I gotta go, but when we come back, I've got some random acts for you, all on this subject. You listen to me, Ellie Krug, the illegal trans woman, and angry Ellie Krug. We'll be back in a sec. Legal trans woman with Ellie Krug. Okay, this is Random Acts where I usually talk about my work or whatever, but I'm going to continue to talk about this case because I want to make a couple of first observations. The good news is that this show airs, both in Minnesota and in Illinois. In both of those states, transgender people have legal rights, have legal protections. Transgender students have legal rights, legal protections. And both the governors of both states, in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling, came out as allies protecting trans people. Tim Walz made this Instagram, Facebook video, went on for a couple of minutes talking about protecting trans students and about wanting to make sure that they get the right to play here in Minnesota. Governor Pritzker was also resistant to the Supreme Court's ruling and saying that in Illinois, he is going to be an ally to protect transgender people because trans people are always looking for allies because we have very few allies. He said, I will be that ally. That was the good news. The bad news is he was talking about this in some gathering where there were a number of people. But when he said, I'm going to protect trans people, I've got to just tell you, the applause was not like overwhelming. It was kind of, milk toasty from the audience. That made like, I don't know. But thank you both, Governor Walz and Governor Pritzker, for wanting to protect my community. But it has been crickets. I mean, we are talking like dead crickets from other Democratic leaders across this country. Maybe I've missed it, but I have not seen a single congressional Democrat come out saying something about this Supreme Court ruling and telling transgender people that he or she or they will be the ally of trans people and about how wrong the decision is. I have not seen a single word. And what that tells me is they're all scared to death that this is going to be a key big issue for re-election. And they're just, rather than doing the right thing, rather than doing the thing that is important, okay, they're running. They're just running scared. Also, I posted on Facebook a word of support to my community on the day that the decision came out. There are like 400, 900, I don't know how many comments. The vast majority of them are negative. Here's the closing. For you who are trans or or gender variant, you have the right to be you. You are worthy. You matter. And don't give up. Don't give up. We will get through this entirely. I got to go. A big thanks to my producer, Patrick. Thank you, Patrick. Listeners, we will get through this. Continue to listen to this show. Email me at ldjkrug@gmail.com if you need a word of support. If you need a shoulder or an ear, do that, okay? I care about you. We will get through this. Ellie Krug, over and out.